let's try Daniel in the lion's den. Daniel was a person who loved God. And every single time he prayed to him. But there was a king, he liked Daniel too. But there were these 3 guys, they didn't like Daniel. They said, "Hey, king, want to make a new rule?" And the king was listening. Oh yeah. So they told him the new rule. Only people should love you and pray to you, not God. But Daniel heard this message, but he didn't care. He loved God. He loved the king too, but he loved God too. Daniel was the king's advisor, and it gives people advice. And then the 3 men who didn't like Daniel threw him in a lion's den. And the king was sad. He didn't know they were tricking him. So he wanted to undo his law, but he couldn't. "I want to undo this law." But 3 men said, "No." And then God sent an angel to close the lion's mouth at the night, every single day, at the night, and you get the picture. And so the lions' mouths were closed. But then the king felt bad, so he went after Daniel and said, "I'm sorry." And he rescued Daniel from the lion's den. And then the 3 men, they got kicked. "Get out of here!" And they went in the lion's den. And that's Daniel in the lion's den.
You know, several years ago, my wife and I got this book for our daughter, who you just heard from. It's called Baby's First Bible. And what it does is it takes different moments from the scriptures and it tells them in a kid-friendly way. Here, I'll give you an example of one. Noah's Ark. God told Noah to build a boat. He filled it with all the animals. When a big flood covered all the land, God kept them safe until the waters went down. And that's a great story for kids, right? I mean, because it involves animals, and it's like Noah gets all these animals together on his floating petting zoo, and then they take a cruise throughout the water, and it sounds great, but the problem is it leaves out the part that when the world flooded, everybody got killed. And Noah was so depressed that he planted a vineyard, he made wine, got drunk, and then got naked. That's not in Baby's First Bible. And it's probably good that it's not there, but that's not included. Here, I'll give you another sample of a story that's in here. Jesus is born. Mary and Joseph had a baby called Jesus. God's own son was born in Bethlehem. There was no room for them to stay in the inn, so Mary made a bed for him in the manger. And this is so great. This is so cute. I mean, Mary and Joseph, they're going to have a little baby. And the baby, he's so cute. He's so cute. I just want to pinch his cheeks. And there's no room for them in the inn. And the reason why there's no room for them in the inn is because Joseph's family doesn't want to have anything to do with them. Because Mary is having God's baby. Sure, Mary, you've been sipping the sauce, right? God's baby. Okay, whatever. Joseph, do you believe that? And the reason why Joseph's family wants nothing to do with him, why they won't let them stay with them when they show up for the census, is because they've had this baby out of wedlock. They're not even married. Joseph's not the father. Nobody knows who the father is. This is a bastard child. And so we don't want anything to do with you. And then they go to this barn where Mary finds this nice, soft place to place Jesus in, but he's placed in itchy, scratchy hay. And there's all these animals that are all around, but the problem is it smells like animals. And this is not the place that you want to give birth to a baby in. But Baby's First Bible doesn't share that. And it's probably good that the publisher decided to leave all of that out, because after Jesus is born, Mary, Joseph, and Jesus then become refugees. They escape to Egypt because King Herod wants to have them killed. And they live in poverty. They're outcasts. Like, this is this true story of what happens with Jesus and his birth. And again, Baby's First Bible is awesome when you're introducing your kids to some of the stories in the scriptures. And again, it's a good thing that they don't include all the stuff that's in there, because some of the stories in the scriptures are bold and raw and real. And it's a little too much for a 3-year-old to handle. But here's what I've come to discover, that Baby's First Bible is really great for 3-year-olds, but a lot of adults have this censored version of the scriptures when it comes to their faith. Like, for so many of us, what I've found in Christianity is that a lot of Christian adults have this understanding or this thinking of the scriptures where it's censored, it's watered down, and it's not as real and as raw, and we base our faith on that. And so what happens is we have this censored version of the scriptures, and we apply that to God, we apply it to church, we apply it to our Christianity, and what happens is we end up with this weak sauce version of Christianity that we slather all over our lives that isn't accurate or true, because we have this censored understanding of the scriptures. And so what I've come to discover is that for many Christians, the God that they believe in is a God who simply says, hey, I just want you to be a better person if you can. Like, try and be nicer. Don't use 4-letter words. Open doors for people. Smile a lot and say thank you. If you could just be a better version of you, that would be really great. And for a lot of Christians, this is their understanding of God. For a lot of Christians, the God that they serve is a God who says, I would never call you outside of your comfort zone to make you greater. Instead, I just want to see, maybe you could take a step, and then maybe that'd be good. For a lot of Christians, the God that they believe in is a God who's okay with their hypocrisy, as long as they say the right words and they show up to church. For a lot of Christians, the God that they believe in is a God who is too small, because they see him through the lens of Baby's First Bible. I mean, that's their understanding of God. For so many Christians, just what I've come to discover, our view, their view, is not of a God who demands that we take up our cross and follow him. For so many Christians, the God that they serve is not the same kind of God who, yes, he told Peter to do this, and James and John and Matthew to leave everything and follow him with reckless abandon. But God would never ask me to do that because it's outside my comfort zone. For a lot of Christians, just what I've come to discover is that the God that we serve is a God who would never call us to sacrifice, who would never call us to give, who would never call us to serve if we don't have time for it. For a lot of Christians, the God that we serve is this God who's been watered down and censored, and it shows in our life. And if you're here today for the first time, or maybe you've been coming for a while and you're not so sure about this whole God thing, look, I'm so glad that you're here, and my hope is that you're going to gain some stuff from this series. But I think what you're going to gain from this series is you're going to hear me talk about some of the things that you see in Christianity, and these are the hang-ups for you. And it's like, yeah, Christians say they believe this, but they don't live it out. Why is that? And that's what we're going to tackle throughout this series. How do we stop censoring the scriptures and look at it for all its realness and rawness and say, how do we live that way? Because I just believe that what God has said in his word, he means, and he's called us to actually live. But here's the thing. I believe that when you and I actually live out what God says, we will see a benefit in that. When we live out and practice the principles of God, we will see our life flourish, and we'll become the kind of people we long to be, the kind of people God has called us to be. But we will never become that if we have this idea and this understanding that God just calls us to be nicer people. Here's the deal. If I could just break your bubble, God wants to wreck your life. He wants to destroy it. He wants to ruin it. He wants to tear it down so that he can rebuild it brand new, better than you could ever imagine. But as long as we have this understanding and this idea that God just wants me to be happy, God just wants me to try harder and be better, then we'll miss it. We'll miss it. God doesn't want to come into the house of your life and renovate it. He wants to take a wrecking ball to it so that he can build new construction of your life and where it stood. So that's what we're headed into. Welcome to the Bible Uncensored. We are going to uncensor the scriptures. And my hope, my goal is to help you see the scriptures and all the realness and all the rawness and all the grittiness, and then begin to live it out. So what I want to do today is I want to start with this guy named Daniel. I want to look at his life and see what we can gain from it. But before I show you what the scriptures actually say about him, I want to read to you what Baby's First Bible says about him. Daniel and the lions. Daniel loved God and talked to him every day. When Daniel was thrown into a den of lions, God was there to look after him. He closed the lions' mouths and kept Daniel safe. And this is a great story for kids, right? I mean, especially if you can see the picture. We have Daniel, he's here and he's sitting cross-legged and he has a smile on his face and he's surrounded by these cute, adorable lions that are also smiling. And this is a great kid's story. This is a great image. But the problem is, it's racked with fear. The story is riddled with scandal, and it's just doused in people trying to get ahead and fighting for power. And so as we take a look at what really happened in Daniel's life, my hope is that we'll see how we can apply what we see with Daniel to our own lives and begin to see some breakthroughs in our life. So as we look at Daniel, I just want to give you some context on Daniel. First, when Daniel gets thrown into the lion's den, he's an old guy at this time. Like, he's survived 3 different transfers of power. And so in the very beginning, when we're introduced to Daniel, he's under the reign of King Jehoiakim, who is the king of Judah. And so Judah was this Israelite territory. And what happens is King Nebuchadnezzar, the king of the Babylonians, comes in. He lays siege to Jerusalem, which is the capital of Judah. He takes over Judah. And then he deports the people of Israel, the people of Judah, all over the various conquered territories that he's conquered. And this is one of the strategies that ruling nations would do when they conquer another nation. They wouldn't go in to exterminate people, like wipe them out and kill them that way. Instead, what they would do is they would deport them and have them transferred all over the place and then begin to reacclimate them, erasing their culture, so that they all became the same kind of people. So the way that they tried to incorporate genocide back then, and it happens today even, is they would deport people and try and make them lose their identity and who they are. And so this is what takes place. King Nebuchadnezzar takes over Judah, and then he deports Daniel and some other Hebrew guys, and he sees the potential in them, so he wants to train them up to be part of his ruling council. And one of the ways that he seeks to acclimate them to Babylonian culture is through their diet. And it may seem like a really small thing, right? What happens is Nebuchadnezzar wants them to eat differently. And it's just food. And actually, the food that he wants them to eat is probably better than what they were eating. But Daniel has principles. Daniel is a guy who's not going to compromise. And he's laid this foundation in his life early on, and this is what he falls to. When the king is trying to get him to compromise on his diet, see, God had these religious restrictions for the Hebrew people where he said, you can eat these things, you can't eat these things. So when King Nebuchadnezzar introduces this menu to Daniel and some of these Hebrew guys, Daniel says, it's against what God has said for us to do. And so I'm not going to compromise on that. Now, it's a small thing to compromise on. Daniel, just eat the meat. Daniel, just eat what they're giving you. And Daniel refuses to eat it, not because he's a picky eater. That's another thing, okay? If you're a picky eater, I don't know. But Daniel refuses to eat the food, not because he's a picky eater, but because he's principled and he's standing on a foundation and he refuses to compromise. So what he does is he says to his overseer, he says, hey, how about this? How about you feed me and the rest of the Hebrew guys vegetables for the next 10 days? Just see, we're going vegetarian, baby. Give us some vegetables and water. That's all we'll eat and drink. And then at the end of that, you assess us. And if you see that we're weak and it's not working, then we'll go on the diet you want us to go on. But if we're stronger and we're healthy, we just would ask that you'd keep us on this vegetarian diet. And so I love the approach that Daniel has here, because he has this kind of let's see approach. He has this experimental mentality. And I think if we approach a lot of things in our life with this experimental thing, like let's give it a shot, let's see, let's try it out and see if it works, I think it would help us avoid a lot of conflicts in our life, a lot of arguments. It would help us avoid a lot of impasses in our life. Let's just try it out. Let's give it a shot. Let's see. But oftentimes what happens is we approach people and it's like, it has to be this way. We're going to do it this way. And then we get gridlocked and there's fights and arguments. This happens in our marriage. This happens in our friends. This happens with all kinds of relationships. But Daniel just says, hey, let's just experiment with it. Can we do that? Can you give us 10 days to be vegetarians? And then you just let us know what you see at the end. So the overseer says, okay, Daniel and the rest of the Hebrews become vegetarians for 10 days. The overseer checks them out, and he actually sees that they're fitter and stronger than the people who were on the king's diet and all that. So then what the overseer does was he takes away the choice food from everyone and makes everybody a vegetarian. And at this point, I think everyone hates Daniel because of it, right? Like Daniel is that kid in class who's like, can we please have extra homework? This is Daniel. But he stands on these principles. And by the way, all this stuff that I've said is not an ad for becoming a vegetarian. I think you should eat a nice, good, medium rare steak on a regular basis. Come on, somebody. So Bill, our worship leader who's a vegan, might not agree with that, but I got the mic right now. So what happens is the overseer takes their food away, and everyone is stronger because of that. And can I just point this out, that the principle from this is that oftentimes doing what's difficult for us is what's best for us. Doing the thing that we don't want to do is often the thing that we need to do to get the results that we long for. And so look, I know it's easy to hit the one-click button on Amazon, because when you do that, dopamine rushes through your brain. And then when the package arrives, you see it and endorphins rush through your body because I got a package. And it's easy to keep doing that, but as you continue to do that, the problem is your finances look anemic. It's not getting you where you want to get financially by doing the easy thing. And look, I know it's easy for you to react and to pull out all the snark when your boyfriend or your husband says something, or your girlfriend or your wife says something. It's easy to do that, and sometimes it even feels good to do that. You feel justified in doing it. But the problem is the result is residual resentment that lies around, and your relationship drifts further apart. Doing what's easy and what feels good isn't always what's best for us and doesn't always give us the results that we long for. I know it's easy to lounge on the couch and sip a margarita and eat chips and salsa at night while binge watching Friends wishing they were your friends. But the problem is, when you do that, it's not going to give you the energy that you long for, the body that you desire, and you ain't going to have no friends because you're going to live in this reality TV fantasy. Friends isn't reality TV, but you get what I'm saying. You're going to live in this sitcom fantasy. And you're going to judge other people. How come they're not more like Ross? How come they're not more like, you know? So doing what's difficult is often what's best for us. And so I just want to ask you, what have you been avoiding because it's difficult? What have you been not doing because it's hard? It's time to embrace what's difficult. This is what Daniel does. He embraces what's difficult, and ultimately it becomes the best thing for them. So Daniel built his life on this principle of, I'm going to stand on what I know is right, and I'm going to do the difficult thing even though it is difficult. And what happens is eventually Nebuchadnezzar, who's the king of Babylon, is succeeded by Belshazzar. And then Belshazzar is killed by Darius, the king of the Medes, who is king under Cyrus, the king of the Persians, once they conquer Babylon in 539 BC. And I share that with you just so you know that the stuff in the scriptures is not the stuff of fairy tale, but the stuff in the scriptures is the stuff of history. And so you can look this up and you can see that this actually happened. The stuff in the scriptures was written by real people at real places at real times, talking about real things. And so King Darius, he wasn't the king of the Persians, but he was a Mede, the Medo-Persian Empire. He's one of the kings under King Cyrus. He comes in, they overtake Babylon, and what Darius does is he sets up 3 different people in power to oversee sub-areas of the region. And so just like we have mayors who oversee a city, governors who oversee a state, a president who oversees the country, he divides the nation up with these different overseers. And Daniel has proven himself so much that he's one of these overseers. And he's so good that Darius wants to make him in charge of the entire nation just under him. And the thing is, some of Daniel's contemporaries get word of this, and they start sipping on some haterade and the flavor of resentful raspberry. And they don't like that Daniel is rising to power like that. These are probably the same guys who were made to be vegetarians earlier in their life because of Daniel, I don't know. But they don't like that Daniel is rising like he is. And so they start plotting to try and pull him down back to where he is. So here's what happens. Daniel chapter 6, verse 4. It said, "Then the other administrators and high officers began searching for some fault in the way Daniel was handling government affairs. But they couldn't find anything to criticize or condemn. He was faithful, always responsible, and completely trustworthy." Real quick before I go on, do I have some water right there? Can I get... My stage ninja always does a great job of bringing some water for me. It's empty. Maybe I can get a bottle of water. Appreciate it. I think I took it from the podium. Sorry, stage ninja. You did so awesome though. Y'all give it up for Chad. I just know I'm not going to get through this without some of that H2O. Thank you. Thanks, Nathan. Good throw. Good catch. Appreciate it. So, Daniel chapter 6, verse 4. Let me read it again. "Then the other administrators and high officers began searching for some fault in the way Daniel was handling government affairs, but they couldn't find anything to criticize or condemn. He was faithful, always responsible, and completely trustworthy." Would that be a description used to describe you? Always faithful, always responsible, completely trustworthy. So what they do is they try and find some fault in Daniel, but they can't find any fault in Daniel. The reason is because Daniel is a man of integrity. And the reason why he's a man of integrity is because he said, this is the foundation that I'm going to build my life on, and I'm going to refuse to move from it. And we see that with even the diet plan. I'm not going to budge on that. Daniel's a man of integrity. He's a man who does what he says he's going to do. What he says he does, and what he does he says. Daniel is a man who he's the same person everywhere he goes at all times. Daniel's a man who when he's asked, hey, are you going to show up? He doesn't say, I'll try. You know, I'll try means no, right? Yeah. Hey, I got this thing coming. Oh yeah, I'll try and make it. No, you ain't. You ain't coming. Just say no. We all know it. Just say no. Hey, you think, well, I'll do my best. Don't do your best. Just do it. Yes or no. Commit. Daniel's a man of integrity, and they can't find anything wrong with him. And I want to invite you to put yourself in Daniel's situation right now. These men are coming accusing Daniel, trying to find something wrong with him, but they can't find anything wrong with him. If you had some people who set themselves up in opposition to you, and they did some digging in your life to try and find some things that were wrong with you, that they wanted to use to bring you down, would they find anything? Is there anything in your life that's hidden in the shadows, where if light were shown on it, it would be exposed? Is there anything in your life that you're ashamed of? Is there anything in your life right now where you're teetering between integrity and dishonesty? Would anybody be able to find anything in your life that they could bring up to discredit you? You're thinking about it right now. You got 2 or 3 things you're thinking about right now. Here's your homework for this week, because the sermon lasts beyond Sunday. If you just come and hear the word, but you don't put it into practice, nothing's going to change in your life, and you'll fade after a few months, and you'll say, well, church didn't work for me. No, because you didn't work the process. So you got to do what you hear. Here's the homework. That thing you're thinking about, what is the thing you're going to commit to do this week? Just one step. You don't have to overhaul your life right now. What's one thing that you're going to commit to do to shift that, to get rid of that, to change that in your life? Maybe Maybe what you do is you have a conversation with your spouse and you say, hey, you know what? We're on the same team. And we need to decide to fight fair. So when we have disagreements, we're not going to cuss at each other anymore. Okay? We're just not, because we're on the same team and we don't cuss at each other. Maybe the thing that you commit to do is you put some accountability software on your computer. Or you remove the internet app from your phone. What's the thing that you're going to commit to do this week to take a step towards becoming a person of integrity? Maybe you pour the alcohol down the drain. You toss out the carton of cigarettes. Maybe what you do is you cut up the credit cards. Like what's the thing that you need to do to begin to make traction in your life? Because you already know what it is. You already know what needs to change. You already know what you need to get rid of. It's time to do it. So Daniel is a man of integrity. They can't find anything wrong with him. It says they concluded our only chance of finding grounds for accusing Daniel will be in connection with the rules of his religion. Daniel is so flawless. He's so perfect. They can't find anything wrong with him. So the thing that they're going to bring against him is his faith. He's so strong in his faith, they said, we got to find some way to bring him down because of that, because he's not going to compromise on his faith. Let me ask him. If a law were made, a rule were made, somebody were to come to you and say, the only way that we're going to bring this person down is because of their faith, would that be a big deal for you? Like, would you be like, well, they won't have much to work with? I mean, if a law were made where it was like, hey, you can't read the Bible anymore, would you say, oh, it wouldn't really affect me because I'm not doing it anyway? Hey, we came to church to change, right? I got to ask the tough questions. Can I ask the tough questions? If a law was made, you can't go to church anymore, would you be like, that would only affect me like a couple weeks out of the month? Because I don't go anyway. I don't watch anyway. I know we're in COVID season, and I get it. Hey, if you're watching at home, I'm so grateful that you're watching. Thanks for tuning in. Continue to keep watching. So appreciate that, love that, but make it a priority. Make it a priority. And just because you're watching at home, don't think that you're any less part of this church than the people who show up, because you are part of this church. So continue to watch, continue to share. Hey, continue to give. Come on and figure out some ways that you can serve throughout the week. But I just wonder if a law was passed where you can't serve in the local church. You can't give financially in the local church. You can't tell people about Jesus. You can't lead your family towards Jesus. Would you be affected by that? Or would you be like, I'm not doing it anyway, so it doesn't matter to me? And maybe you said, we don't have to worry about that. But Daniel had to worry about that. People in countries where Christianity is illegal, our brothers and sisters across the world who are killed because of their faith have to worry about that. I wonder if somebody attacked your faith and the practices and the habits of your faith, would they have much to work with, or would they say, dear God, they said they're a Christian, but I don't see much evidence of it? Hey, the reason why we show up to church, the reason why we tune in online is so that we can remind ourselves we're part of a community greater than ourselves, that we're in this movement together. We're on a mission to see people raised to life in Christ. That's why we show up. Not just so we can get filled up, but so that we can get our marching orders to go out into the world and make a difference. You don't show up, you're going to miss that. You're going to miss that. We're in this together. The reason why we give financially to the local church, why we give back to God through the local church, is so that we can increase generosity in our own life. We grow our faith when we do that. The reason why we give financially is to remind ourselves that my faith is not in what I make, my faith is in God who gives me what I make. That's why we do that. The reason why we serve is so that we can be reminded that we're living for something greater than ourselves. We're living beyond ourselves, and we get a chance to join in with so many other people to make an impact. That's why we do this. It's not some religious ritual or obligation. So I just wonder, if somebody made a law attacking your faith, would there be much to attack? And if you're not a Christian, I mean, of course not. I get it. So you get a pass on this. But for the person who's a Christian, would they be able to bring you down if they looked at your faith, or would there be not much for them to work with? So they concluded our only chance of finding grounds of accusing Daniel will be in connection with the rules of his religion. So what Daniel's detractors did was they said, let's pass a law where for 30 days the only person you can pray to is Darius the king. They take it to the king, they appeal to his ego, and Darius says, I like it. Put it into law. But Daniel's a man of principle. Daniel's a man who has built his life on a rock-solid foundation of not compromising. So he refuses to pray to Darius. Instead, he's loud, he's proud, he's going to be bold and audacious. And he continues to pray to God. When Daniel learned that the law had been signed, he went home and knelt down as usual. Because Daniel made a habit of practicing his faith. And so the Davises went to church as usual, because that's what we do. The Allens sat down to give as usual, because that's what they do. The Smiths showed up to serve as usual, because that's what they do. I wonder, for your family, for you, could it be said as usual when it comes to the way you practice your faith? They read the Bible as usual. It's nothing new. Of course that's what we do, because that's what we built our life on. And if not, it's time to start some new habits. But when Daniel learned that the law had been signed, he went home and he knelt down as usual in his upstairs room with its windows open toward Jerusalem. He prayed 3 times a day, just as he had always done, giving thanks to his God. And so Daniel decides he will not compromise no matter what, even if it means that doing the right thing is not going to benefit him. And he did this before with his vegetarian diet. His friends Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego did this because there was a time where Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon at the time, erected this gold statue of himself, and he said, you got to kneel and pray to this statue. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego said, we're not doing it. So they're thrown into a fiery furnace. God saves them from that fiery furnace, but they stand on a principle. They stand on a foundation of faith that they had built, and they refuse to compromise. Well, now it's Daniel's turn. I'm not going to compromise. I'm still going to follow God, even if it's detrimental to me. Can I ask you, will you choose to do the right thing even if you aren't rewarded for it? Are you the kind of person of integrity? Are you the kind of person who will do the right thing even if you suffer for it? Because refusing to pad the numbers might not get you the promotion that you want, but if you would just compromise, you could get promoted. Refusing to pad the numbers might even get you fired, but will you do the right thing anyway? Deciding I'm going to set boundaries of purity and relational integrity with the person that I'm dating might mean you end up single. And he breaks up with you. Are you okay with that? And will you do the right thing even though you suffer for it? Doing the right thing doesn't always bring us a reward. And this is a problem. We have this mentality, and it comes from Baby's First Bible looking at the scriptures, that when I do the right thing, I'll be rewarded. So when I do the right thing and things aren't going well with me, I wonder what happened. How come God isn't paying attention? I mean, I'm showing up to church, I'm reading the Bible, I'm trying to do the right thing, I'm trying to change my attitude, but then the crap hit the fan, and now here I am. Thanks, God. Doing the right thing doesn't always mean things go easy for you. But will you do the right thing anyway? Daniel prays anyway, and he's thrown into the lion's den, but then he's saved. And I'm not going to talk much about his time in the lion's den, but here's the thing. We know he was saved, but Daniel didn't know that was going to happen. That's got to be scary for him. He's there, he prays, God saves him. Sometimes God doesn't save us. And the question I got to ask you is, are you okay with that too? Are you okay with that too? Because what Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego say when they're about to be tossed in the fiery furnace is they say, we will not bow, our God will save us, but even if he doesn't, we still won't bow. Even if God doesn't come through like you want him to, and the raise doesn't happen, amen. And the raise doesn't happen, you don't get the car, you don't get the job, you don't get the guy, you don't get the girl, you don't get the whatever it is, will you still do what's right? And we gotta graduate beyond doing things just to get things. That's so shallow, that's so surface. We gotta get to a point in our life and our faith where we're gonna do the right thing because it is the right thing. So Daniel's thrown into the lion's den, he's saved, and then his accusers are thrown into the lion's den. King Darius comes, he gets Daniel out, and it says this, and the king gave orders to arrest the men who had maliciously accused Daniel. He had them thrown into the lion's den along with their wives and children. The lions leaped on them and tore them apart before they even hit the floor of the den. Baby's First Bible left that part out. And it's a good thing too. I don't know if my daughter at 3 years old would have been ready for that. But the scriptures say that the accusers of Daniel were thrown into the lion's den, and they were leapt on and torn apart before they even hit the ground. I want to point out two things to you real quick, and then I'm done. You do not need to be the one to get revenge or to strike back. It's God's job to be the one to avenge you. So when that person says that, does that, hurts you, you respond with love. You respond with grace. You respond with compassion. Because you are a person of integrity. You are a person of honor. You are the kind of person who will not stoop to their level. You be the person to say, God, I am seething right now. I want them dead. I am about to block them, unfriend them, spread some gossip about them, do whatever, but no. Instead, I'm going to trust you to be the judge of it all. And I'm going to keep calm and carry on. I'm going to live my life and show love and grace and peace. Second thing I want to point out from this is it says that Daniel's accusers and their wives and children were thrown into the lion's den. Well, why is that? I mean, the wives and children didn't do anything to deserve it. Why did they get thrown into the lion's den too? Here's why. And this is a principle, men, I need you to understand. You're the head of your household. And the decisions you make don't just affect you, but they affect those under your influence. And this is true beyond just men. This is true for everyone. The decisions you make affect others other than you. You got to understand that. These men made a poor decision that impacted the lives of the people they love most. And you've experienced that, and you know that because there's some trauma in your life, there's some wounds that you have because a man in your life fell, because a man in your life made a bad decision. Maybe it was your dad, grandparent, or granddad. Maybe it was somebody you dated, maybe it was your husband. Men, we have the power to wound more than we could ever imagine. But we have the power to build more than we could ever imagine as well. So, just know your decisions impact people beyond you. This is what happens with these men and their families. They suffer because of the decision that the men in their life made. So for everyone, not just men, I want to ask you, what are you building your life on? Can I just ask you, if you would you just close your eyes? And I want to invite you to contemplate this. What are you building your life on? What is the foundation of your life? What's the kind of person you want to become? Who do you want to become? Are you that person now? And I know, you're going to work on it. Don't respond with that. Would you hand that over to God? And invite him not to make you a better person, not to make you a nicer version of you, but would you ask him to make you completely and radically new, changed and transformed? Because I believe if we do anything less than that, we will settle for less than God's best. God, make us new. Change our mindset. Change our attitude. Give us discipline, self-control. Make us people of integrity. Make us people who stand on the rock-solid foundation of faith, rooted in you. Give us the strength to be the kind of people who refuse to compromise. We want to chase after you, God. We want to become more like you, Jesus. And I pray that we would not be satisfied with anything less than that. Cleanse our heart. Purify our mind. Change and transform our lives, God. We want to be like you in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen.